please welcome food futurist Tony Hunter to the stage.
Thank you, Lucy, for that kind introduction, and thank you to Food South Australia and all of you for having me here today. Now, we only have a relatively short time together, so let's dive right into the future. So, imagine our world in 2050. There will be 11 billion entities on the planet. Now, I deliberately say entities because besides our 9.7 billion humans, there will be over 1.3 billion, yes, billion, pet cats and dogs, all needing to be fed. So it's essential for the South Australian food industry to understand the food, health and nutrition requirements of these consumers and just who the generation is that will determine this future. Now, to help us understand our consumers, we're bombarded daily with newsletters, podcasts, webinars. We come to conferences, we go to expos, all presenting us with a dizzying array of facts, figures and events that could affect the future of our industry, our businesses and our consumers. So who here gets newsletters, watches podcasts, webinars? Yes, I think pretty sure we all do. But have you ever felt overwhelmed by all this information piling up around you and what it means for your business and your consumer? As futurist John Naisbitt says, we are drowning in information, but we are starved for knowledge. So what we need is a way out of this maze of information that's piling up around us. What we need is a roadmap. And the best roadmap to understanding our future consumer is built on technologies. Why technologies? Well, you can't talk about food from farm to fork without talking about technology. Food used to be a sleepy technological backwater compared to things like the electronics industry. But no more. Technology is now everywhere in food. And that's what makes this the most exciting time to be in the food industry that we've seen in over 30 years. Every day is a new adventure in innovation. So over the years of research on these technologies, I've come to the conclusion that we're approaching the intersection of 5 exponential technologies driven by 3 accelerated technologies that will determine the future of food for decades to come. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying conventional crop and animal agriculture or anything like that will disappear, just that these 5 technologies are going to be the most influential in determining what the future of food looks like. So our 5 technologies are alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, genomics, the microbiome, and synthetic biology, driven by our 3 accelerators, AI, sensors, and quantum computing, all leading to our exponential food future. And I'm sure you're all thinking, WTF, what's a exponential future? Well, it's built on 2 key concepts. The first key concept is, as I said, food is now technology. They are inextricably linked. You cannot talk about one without talking about the other at some level. And the second key concept is built on the first. That is that technologies advance exponentially. So who here has heard of Moore's law of computing? Yep. That says that basically the number of transistors on a computer chip doubles about every 2 years. So you go from 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. After 5 years, you have 16 times the computing power that you had at the start. That is the power of exponential technology. And that brings me neatly to an example of exponential change. Now this, wait for it, this is portable computing, 1975 style. I used to have hair like that, but that's a whole other story. Now, my friend Mr. Robert L. Johnson here has his hands on the world's first portable computer, the IBM 5100. Who would like to guess how much that computer weighed? Just the one he has his hand on there. How much do you think that weighed? Someone give me a number. 25? 20? Any advances on 20? Do you want to come first? Come on, go. It weighed 23 kilograms. Do not put that on your airline tray table. It is not going to end well. Now, this state-of-the-art machine, fully spec'd up, top-of-the-line storage, top-of-the-line memory, cost the princely sum of $19,750 US in 1975, which is a staggering $115,333 in today's terms. But even more staggering, this top-of-the-range machine came with a memory and a storage of 64K. Not megabytes, not gigabytes, kilobytes. Now, the latest Galaxy Z Fold comes with 10 million times the storage at around 1/1000th of the cost, at 1/100th of the weight, and all in only 50 years. That is the power of exponential change. So just imagine that rate of change. It goes to show today's reality was yesterday's science fiction. And because of that rate of change, it is very dangerous to live linearly in an exponential world, because this is what happens. Our friend down the bottom left there, I've got a few data points, no problems. I shall just extrapolate through here, and I know where the future's going to be. And they look up and I'm nowhere near where I thought I was going to be. That's because those few points they're extrapolating on were not a straight line. They were the start of an exponential curve. And that's what gives the exponential shock factor, which is why I say it is dangerous to think or live linearly in an exponential world. So where do these concepts lead us? Food is now technologies advancing exponentially. Food is now techsponential. But of course, as we all know, technologies are one thing, right? But what about consumers? Now, when we think about consumers, we all hear about Gen Z. It's Gen Z this, or Gen Z if you're American friends. Gen Z this, Gen Z that, Gen Z the other. Everybody talks about Gen Z. But the long-term future of food, we need to be looking at the generation that comes after Gen Z, which is Generation Alpha. Born 2010 to the end of 2024, by the end of that year, there were 2 billion Gen Alphas on the planet. Nearly 25% of the global population. And this is what the majority of Gen Alphas look like. Concentrated some in Africa, up through India, down through Southeast Asia, China, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And the key thing to remember about Generation Alpha is they are not just digital natives, they are technology natives. They've grown up with Spot, the Boston Dynamics dancing robot, private companies shooting rockets into space, trillion-dollar valuations on companies, trillionaires, and now AI. And probably in their lifetime, they will see a permanent colony on Mars. Now, there's not a lot of research on what they think about technologies and so on being used in food because, of course, the oldest of them today is only 16, so you can't do much work on children. But we can look at previous generations. And if we look at Gen Z, when they were asked, are you comfortable with technology being used to make their food? 77 said yes. Gen Y, 67%. Boomers and X's tied at 58%. So if we look at the likelihood of them accepting technology being used to make their food, just from that data alone, it's looking pretty good. And with some research done on Generation Alpha and asking them what they think about technologies. So 63% of them said that they value having the latest technology, versus only 31% of Gen Z. And 46% of alphas want technologies that don't even exist yet. Poor old Gen Z just wants a longer life battery. So that's the difference in the approach between the alphas and the Zs. And if we have a look now at how Gen Alpha are actually adopting technologies, by age 9, they have access to at least 4 devices. So they are taking up technology at quite a rate. So much so that from Gen Alpha's point of view, they no more think about technology in their life. They think about turning on the tap and get running water. It's just there. It's a baseline expectation. And the other thing to remember is that this is a globe-spanning generation. So you can't just say, oh, I will just worry about the Gen Alphas in my own state or my own country. No, no, no. Given their technological prowess, something that a Gen Alpha finds interesting on one side of the world can travel to the other side of the world in weeks, days, hours, or even minutes. A good illustration of that, which is already happening with other generations, is K-pop and K-beauty products. That is from South Korea and has spread globally around the world, particularly K-pop, bands like BTS, girl bands like Blackpink. It is a global phenomenon. And a recent example of this is the release, and anyone seen K-pop Demon Hunters? Yeah, okay. It's K-pop Demon Hunters. When K-pop Demon Hunters came out, there was a 75% increase in searches for Korean food. There was a 231% increase in searches for kimbap, which is known also as Korean sushi. So you can see that something that in one relatively small country in the world can spread around the globe in days, hours, or even minutes. So that is how Gen Alpha is going to operate in the future. That's a signal that we're seeing from the past that will translate into the future. And this is apparently a famous scene that went viral of one of the characters eating kimbap, which spiked the whole kimbap interest. Now, who here has a Generation Alpha child or knows someone with a Gen Alpha child? I was asking before, what happens if your Gen Alpha child or the one you know wants to do something? I gather from that you generally end up doing what they want to do, right? Yeah. That is why, though, alphas are known as the gateway generation. They are the gateway to ideas to their parents. They're also the gateway to their parents' wallet. So we see a lot of data on spending. And people think, wow, look at what millennials are spending on. A huge amount of that expenditure comes from their alpha children. So alpha children don't have a lot of their own money, but they influence an enormous amount of spending. So be very careful in looking at your data. Do not underestimate the power of Generation Alpha. When they do spend their own money, 72% of them spend it on food and drink. So they are already deciding and creating their food habits right now at ages 5, 6, 7, 8 and upwards, maybe even younger, as we'll see. So don't underestimate, again, that influencing Generation Alpha means influencing them now. If you think, I will wait till they're 18 and they've got their own money, too late. You've lost an entire generation. And when we look at what else they do there, in looking at the percentage of the population, Gen Alpha population, that buy independently, as we can see here, 97% of 7 to 14-year-olds say they buy independently at least some of the time. So they are developing their own spending habits. As I said before, they spend it on, particularly on food. That is their number one thing they spend their own money on. And eventually, the spending power of Generation Alpha will be some 2.4 trillion Australian dollars. If we look at the overall footprint of what's spent on them, eventually that will be 7.4 trillion Australian dollars. So let's look a little bit more about Gen Alphas and their effect on food. One study in the UK said that 80% of UK parents say that by the age of 3, their child influences some, most, or all of the family expenditure on food. So it goes back to millennials have got the credit card, who's influencing the expenditure? And Mintel found a very similar result, again, for our 4 to 17-year-olds and their influence on food. So there's a lot of data out there to saying that, yes, they do influence food. And if we have a look at a few of the values that Generation Alpha hold, one of the key ones is sustainability. Another study showed that 39% of children value sustainability in their decisions as to what food they will consume. So that is going to be a major value for Generation Alpha. The next value for Generation Alpha is transparency. So in the future, they're going to want to know about their food. If it's an animal product, how were the animals treated? If it's a plant-based product, what about herbicides? What about pesticides? If it's a new technology, how sustainable is that new technology? Because they'll be looking to, whether it's new technology or conventional technologies, what is the sustainability credentials? And another huge value of Generation Alpha involves the humanisation of pets. Pets are now part of the family in the way they never were before. They deserve as much care, attention, respect as any other human member of the family. And that's a particular challenge for animal agriculture. We know, Generation Alpha, you love your pets and you look after them, you spend money on them, but hey, we want to kill these other ones over here and cut them up so you can eat them. The tension there is something that needs to be managed. And so what will they value? They will value sustainability, they will value transparency, they will value animal welfare, and above all, running all through those is technology. Now, just a word of caution here too. We talked about Gen Z before. Don't think that you can just take all this data and research you have on Gen Z and just go, I'll just extrapolate that, like our friend with a straight line, on what Gen Alpha will want. No. Just as the Zs rebelled against millennial values, so the Alphas will rebel against some of the conservatism of some of Gen Z. I mean, Gen Zs are buying vinyl. I give them about 2 years to work out why we gave up vinyl in the first place. By the time they bought 3 needles, changed it, they've gone down, they scratched it trying to find the track they want. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily going to end well for our friends in Gen Z. But that's the tension there. You have Generation Z, who are a bit retro, conservative consumerism. Have the Alphas who go, my bottom line is I want technology seamlessly and instantly in everything I do. So too much technology, you alienate the Zs. Too little technology, you alienate the Alphas. So it's finding that balance between the amount of technology that you're applying to your food and what you're doing to appeal to both of those generations. So given our technology-loving Alphas, what are the 2 of our exponential technologies that will have most effect on the Alphas? It's going to be genomics and the microbiome, because those are 2 very consumer-facing technologies. So the first one we'll talk about is genomics, which is, of course, the study of the DNA structure of any organism, whether it's human, animal, or otherwise. And the reason that's becoming so mainstream and so important is let's look at the cost of sequencing the whole human genome. Back in 2001, $100 million US. Now this graph only goes to 2022 because unfortunately in the US there's not enough funding for them to keep updating it at the moment. But it's projected this year to be $100 US dollars. That's 1,000,000 times cheaper than 2001. As you can see, it's outpaced our Moore's law of computing quite handily. So it's going to become so easy and, have your genome sequence. It'll be like, let me see, will I give up a cup of coffee every day this month? Or only with inflation, maybe in the next 2 weeks, and have my genome sequenced, or do I want that coffee? What the heck, I'll just have my genome sequenced. That is how easily and common it will become to understand how your genetics affects your health and nutrition. And this combination of genetics and nutrition is known as nutrigenomics. Now, this is a company called Nutrigenomics with an X instead of a CS. They analyze your DNA, and they will tell you about your caffeine metabolism, whether it can have risks for cardiovascular disease, how sodium affects you, omega-3 metabolism, and they can produce a tailored dietary plan for you based on what you want to do, whether, as we saw, that's for athletes or just for us normal people. So I had that done, and I'm a slow caffeine metabolizer, so I drink my coffee a bit earlier in the day than I used to, so I get better sleep. Just a very small thing that having my DNA analysed actually changed one of my habits. This is another cutting-edge company called Nucleus. They analyse for 900 different conditions. They combine that with data from things like smart rings and smart watches, and they will also look at what your the exposure that you have to things like cardiovascular disease, how you metabolize caffeine, etc. as well. And they go deeply into some of your predisposition for genetic disorders versus just simply only the nutrition. Our next technology is the microbiome, which is, of course, all of the bacteria, viruses, fungi, and everything else live on and in our body. And 95% of those live in our gut. We are actually 1 trillion human cells and 1 trillion microbial cells. We're actually only half human. Some people are less than half human, but they can. We're not going to go into that. So what does this show us about food? Well, it's shown us that we are all extremely different in the way we react to food. If we look at Lisa on the left, unlike Jane on the right, they were both fed a cookie, an American, and a banana. And Lisa's blood glucose was spiked by the banana and not by the cookie. Unlike Jane, who was spiked by the cookie but not by the banana. So much for common sense. Approximately 40-odd% of the people in this room shouldn't eat bananas because of the way it will spike your blood glucose. Following a Mediterranean diet, eat lots of fruit and vegetables. I love bananas, eat lots of bananas. I'm not doing myself any favours because I don't understand how that's affecting me. So looking at the individuality of our microbiome, a lot of companies have been formed because they correlated this response back to our microbiome. So companies like Zoe in the UK, Viome in the US, they can test your microbiome and then correlate that to the specific food that will nourish your individual microbiome, which is the basis behind Japanese company Calbee and their body granola. So they will analyze your microbiome, give you a base granola, and then give you specific additions to that base granola that are personalized for your individual microbiome. So you've got the best nutrition out of your food. Another interesting one, and looking at things like conference dinners, it could come in handy. This is from a company called Z Biotics. It's in the US. And they claim if you drink this microbiome preparation before you go out and drink, you will not have a hangover. I don't have any with me, sorry, don't ask me. But I haven't tried it, but I have a friend who tried it, and he tells me that it works. Because it apparently metabolizes the acetaldehyde, which is a compound formed from the breakdown of alcohol, which gives you the hangover. So, no more hangovers. Who knew? So what will our Gen Alphas of the future, our consumers, want? They will want personalisation. And we're not talking about your name printed on a Kit Kat wrapper here. We're talking about true nutritional personalisation. And whether we realise it or not, personalisation is already here. Who here has a streaming audio, streaming video? Yep, lots of people. Well, if you do, like me, you get, if you like this song, you will like that song. You like this movie or series, you will like that one. So we're seeing personalisation coming into every part of our life. And with generative AI, that's only going to get deeper and deeper. So I find a world where our future consumer says, look, personalise everything in my life for me, but just don't personalise my food and tell me what's good for me. I find that to be a very unlikely future. So if we have a look now at our accelerators and how they are affecting these technologies and how fast these technologies are being adopted and how fast they're developing.
Wake up, Daddy's home.
Welcome home, sir.
Now, that is an AI called Jarvis, just a rather very intelligent system from the Iron Man movies back in 2010. Now, Jarvis was CEO Tony Stark's personal AI. He looked after his home, his work, his schedule, his research, and everything else. And that back in 2010 reflected what we are seeing now in the rise of agentic AI. Now, the difference between agentic AI and generative AI is like if you ask Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot a question, right? It gives you an answer, right? And maybe a recommendation. Agentic AI does stuff. So in that example, you'd say to your agentic AI, go out, research a report through my favourite or all generative AIs, produce a 5-page document with a 1-page executive summary, and then email that to these people and the rest on WhatsApp to those people. Tell me when I get any email replies to that and summarise them for me. And it goes out and does it. So in theory, you can get your whole day's work done in only a couple of hours. Just don't tell your boss. So how is this affecting Generation Alphas? Now, one of the agentic AIs making real waves at the moment is OpenClaw. Now, OpenClaw did a ClawCon, which was looking at developing agentic AI apps. And 10 to 15-year-old alphas outperformed adults in workshops in producing AI apps. That is how much Generation Alpha is adopting AI into their lives. And AI is going to accelerate these technologies also by being able to consider huge data sets, often beyond the ability of the human mind to even comprehend. It will find answers to questions we didn't even know we had. And that rise of our agentic AI from 2010, when it was thought to be decades away in just our fancy science fiction, is now reality. Just another example of why today's reality was yesterday's science fiction. Now, looking at our next accelerator, which is sensors. Now, obviously, our future consumer, they're eating food for their health. How do they know whether it's done any good or not? This is where sensors come in. And we've, of course, had smartwatches around for a long time, right? A decade or more. But this is a Samsung Galaxy 8. It has 2 new features which are highly notable. One is if you put your thumb on the sensor on the bottom of the watch, it will tell you the level of beta-carotene in your skin. Beta-carotene is a breakdown product of polyphenols, which are all those lovely coloured compounds in your fruit and vegetables. And so therefore it tells you whether you're eating enough fruit and vegetables or not. It also measures what's called AGEs compounds, advanced glycation end products. Now they're formed when you have a high level of sugar in your blood, combines with protein, DNA and fats to form a sludge which accelerates your aging. So this measures the ages products. You also get ages products, unfortunately, from all those lovely crispy fried things that you do. So keeping track of your ages products tells you something about how well and how healthily you're aging. And that topic of nutrition, human nutrition, healthy aging and health span, the number of years we live healthily, is the hottest topic in human health and nutrition at the moment. But that's another keynote. Now, the real growth in sensors is with smart rings. This is the Ring-Con 2. So this weighs 2.5 grams, 2 millimeters thick, 10 days battery life. And the growth rate on smart rings is 25% compound growth per annum. So it is a massive increase in sensors. And because, of course, they're easy to wear. I mean, I've had this for a while. You just even forget you have it on. It weighs a couple of grams, so what? So you can collect this data on your health. It will do your blood pressure, it will do your blood pressure. It will also do your blood oxygen level, your sleep, your stress, whole heap of other parameters to see how you are coping, I suppose, with day-to-day life and how that's going to affect your health and nutrition. This is a continuous glucose monitor from Abbott called the Lingo. Now again, yes, we've had continuous glucose monitors for diabetes for a long, long time. But the difference here is this is aimed at our health. It's aimed at telling us what foods spike our blood glucose, because as we know, spikes in blood glucose can be a pre-diabetic condition, and also, as we just talked about, it can increase the production of those ages compounds which accelerate our aging. And then we have something from Epicor Biosystems. This measures compounds in your sweat. So it will measure your hydration status, it'll measure your glucose level, it'll measure your stress, and in the future they say it'll even measure zinc, iron, vitamin C and vitamin D, all from our sweat. So in the future we're going to have a whole range of sensors which are gathering data. This is a smart skin powered by sweat. We'll have smart tattoos that will also monitor our health and our nutrition, even ingestible sensors and edible sensors. A sensor you can eat that will produce data and then you can digest the sensor. If you don't like wearing things or swallowing things, how about a smart mirror? This is a smart mirror from Anura. You look into this mirror for 30 seconds and it will tell you your skin age, your pulse, your body mass index. It'll tell you your stress level. It will also even give you a longevity index. Again, we're seeing more and more about these longevity indexes coming in. If you don't fancy looking into the mirror and asking who's the fairest of them all, well, how about a smart scale? This is the Withings smart scale. It measures 60 plus biomarkers. It has 6 zones on your body to tell you about your fat distribution and your muscle distribution. And again, it's another one of these ones that's providing a longevity and aging index. Now, this next sensor I came across just the other day. This is the latest cutting edge sensor, right? It is the flatulence sensor. It's a real thing. Look it up. I'm not making this up. That is a real picture of the flatulence sensor. It will measure gas exchange, let's call it, and by measuring the composition of the gases, will tell you how you are metabolizing your food. And if you have high levels of certain gases, it could indicate maybe you're getting an ulcer or maybe you've got other intestinal problems. Not quite sure how well it's going to catch on. Only time will tell. In the end, though, we need to analyze all this data. We need a model. So we're going to have something like this, Harvey and Harvetta, male and female virtual physiological twins. They measure 80,000 biochemical reactions, 26 organs, 6 blood types, and your microbiome to predict and evaluate how you react to food. Now, of course, trying to get all that data together means we need, of course, our friend AI again. Because as we know, AI's ability to examine these huge data sets and look for patterns in them is what it excels at. And that's why AI is going to help accelerate the uptake of all these sensors and these technologies to evaluate our health and nutrition. And we're already seeing companies come up with that. We have companies here like Human Longevity Inc. and another one called Jivi. And they again will take all this data in, use their AI so that they can then determine what your health status is. Eventually, we're going to be surrounded by an AI shell, looking inwards to our body, looking at all that data, what our food's doing for us, what it's doing to us, and then looking outwards to the outside world, probably communicating to other AIs. And looking again at our friends, the alphas, we can see as they get older, they move from having tablets to having tablets and smartphones. So they are most definitely adopting these new technologies. In fact, 49% of Generation Alphas were already using AI tools in 2024. And how are they using it? They're using it as a search engine, school, creative projects, but they are using AI on a regular basis. Now, you might think, Tony, a bit far-fetched. Well, just have a listen to this short video from Imran Chowdhury from a company called Humane.
Let's say you're health conscious, or you have certain types of food considerations. Let me just show you. Picked up one of these chocolates. Used to eat a ton of these when I was a kid. Can I eat this?
A milky bar contains cocoa butter. Given your intolerance, you may want to avoid it.
So I can't eat these anymore. But what's cool is my AI knows what's best for me, but I'm in total control. I'm going to eat it anyway.
Enjoy it.
Now, unfortunately, that didn't take off. And they had to sell the IP to Hewlett-Packard. What will happen with that, we don't know. But it's a signal of what's coming in the future. And don't write things like the AI pin off too quickly. Let's remember what the first mobile phone looked like in 1985. This is the Motorola 8000X. It weighed 785 grams. It was 30 centimeters long, 9.5 centimeters deep, 4 centimeters wide. 30 minutes talk time, 8 hours standby. And it costs the equivalent today of over 13,000 US dollars, 18,000 Australian dollars just for that. So I say, don't write off something like the AI pin too quickly. Because one thing's for certain, the signals of how this future could come about with Generation Alpha are out there. It's already coming. So what are the food opportunities that we've got? We have a brief look at some of the new cutting-edge technologies that are coming out that could appeal to Generation Alpha. The first one is a company called Solar Foods. They produce food from air. They suck air into their patented machinery. They separate out the water, the carbon dioxide and the nitrogen. They split the water into hydrogen and oxygen using solar energy, hence Solar Foods. And they combine that with microbes and some minerals and they grow food from air. They're already building their second factory. They have contracts, they've released products in the US and in Japan. That product is here right now. And another technology, one of my favorites, is called plant molecular farming, where you take the gene for something you want, you put it into a plant, you grow the plant, and then you take that compound off, and then you process the rest of the product. And we have a company called, I'm sorry about this one, a company called Nobel Foods who have put the gene for casein. into a soybean. They grow the soybean, separate out the casein to make cheese, and process the rest of the soybean as well. And that's a company called Nobel Foods, and their parent company is Alpine Bio. And we have people look at, whether you're a proponent of genetically modified crops or not. The alphas may be quite accepting of that. This is a sorghum that was recently developed in Australia that has 50% more protein than standard sorghum, which lends itself to all sorts of applications, particularly in animal feeds. So CRISPR gene edited, will that be a problem? Probably not for our alphas. And let's not forget, as I'm sure many, if not everyone in this room is aware, of the current fertilizer problems we have with the problems in humus. This is a company called Pivot Bio. They have a gene-edited soil microbiome that can reduce the nitrogen usage by up to 40 kilograms per hectare. They've been around for about 5 or 7 years now commercially. They've sold out every year. You can only imagine how popular they are at the moment with their ability to reduce nitrogen. And who here likes chocolate? I hate to tell you, chocolate is under threat. Diseases, deforestation, lack of labour, all threatening our chocolate. But fortunately, our friends at California Cultured have taken cacao plant cells and they grow them in huge stainless steel reactors to make chocolate components. They already have a 10-year contract with giant Japanese chocolate company Meiji to incorporate their products into making chocolates. So our chocolate is safe. I mean, if you have no other reason to help save the planet, this is it. Save Earth. It's the only one with chocolate. So, what could our consumer future look like on a day-to-day basis? So we're going to have a look at a short video here for a concept restaurant called Sushi Singularity in Tokyo. Now, the ingredients you're going to see in this, they could be animal-based, plant-based, they could be anything. But have a look at the concept. So in just 77 seconds, we will see how this could play out in real life. Our friend Walter Davis, he goes to Sushi Singularity for a meal. As he enters the restaurant's AI recognises him using facial recognition software, and Walter's current nutritional profile is sent by his AI, Harvey, to the restaurant AI. He sits down, he's greeted personally, and the 3D printer is sent the exact nutritional profile that Walter needs right now. And it prints out a product for him. Now, this brings together our microbiome, our genomics, and everything else all in one package. It's served with a flourish, and significantly, so this is extensions of technologies that currently exist. This is not something that's got to be invented. Walter tries the product, and from the look on his face, it's delicious. So this is how things could play out for our generation alphas by 2040 or even beforehand. Now, we've covered a lot of ground in what we've talked about, but the key thing to remember with all of these technologies, as I say, they are science fact, they are not science fiction. They're all here right now. It's only their full impact that's yet to be felt. And if you're still thinking, a bit far-fetched, remember our friend here? 10 million times the storage at around 1/1000th of the cost, at 1/100th of the weight, in all in less than 50 years. And not only that, but they make phone calls, surf the internet, and if you want, you can even watch cat videos.
Are you kidding me? Drop it! Drop the gun! Give me that! Hey, let go! What is wrong with you?
The next iteration of cat videos. And Yes, looking at how fast technology advances, remember, today's reality was yesterday's science fiction. So, when we want to appeal to Generation Alpha, it's their attitudes, values and opinions, probably driven initially by their millennial parents' spending, that will determine what this future looks like. So these alphas, they represent an enormous opportunity for South Australian food companies, and both domestically and internationally. So catering for the food, health and nutrition requirements of Generation Alpha will ensure the current and the future relevance of the South Australian food industry to the AI-powered needs of Generation Alpha for decades to come. Thank you.